everyone. Back for another lovely drive and another lovely episode. And this one comes from just having a weird epiphany about a video game series that has been very, very beloved by me and quite a few people. But uh, sadly, it just seems like not a lot of people have really, really ever heard of it or even given it a chance. But I love this game. I loved it when it first came out. It was something new, something very, very innovative. And yes, it had a lot of shortcomings. And yes, there's a lot of stuff that really could have been done better and fixed and improved upon. But overall, it was still a very great and unique experience for a genre that was just solely reserved for shooters. The game I am talking about is Mirror's Edge. And Mirror's Edge Catalyst, the pre-sequel, I think that was the right word. It's been a while since I've actually had to use that word. But anyway, I had the epiphany of, I was just like, it popped into my head, and I was listening to the main theme for Mirror's Edge Catalyst and going like, the soundtrack on this, gorgeous. It is just very, very, it's a very big mixed bag of just what the sounds are, what it sets you up for. And then thinking back on it, and it was like I really loved the first game, which was Mirror's Edge. Came out on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 and PC, of course. But at a time when the first person genre was solely based or solely cemented itself only in like shooters, and then like a little bit in Elder Scrolls. But otherwise, yeah, you were just a camera with a weird set of hands and a gun, and you just saw red every time you got hurt. So, what made this game really, really crazy to even be attempted was the time it came out was like 2005, 2006 ish. This was when like YouTube was in its infancy. And when I say like in its infancy, I mean YouTube was still very much brand new, and people could just quite literally upload just about anything they wanted. It was like a very innocent time for YouTube. Not in the sense of like what the content was that was being posted on there, but it was like there was no monetization. It was still people just posting videos online of just about anything. And of course, parkour just kind of really blew up and kicked off. Just showing people not necessarily doing like the acrobatic parkour, like all the flips and the jumping, but like the running, the traversing, just the unique body movements to maintain momentum and yet efficiently carry that momentum to cover great distances, or learning how to land certain ways or utilize your body to get that extra like inch or two to get a hold of the ledge and pull the rest of your body over. Like it was crazy just seeing people being able to do all that. And now you're seeing a bunch of videos of YouTube on YouTube of people doing this because they wanted to show off what they can do or show off what their friends can do or show off, create a community around it. Because again, this is like we're in like the infancy of YouTube and the infancy of just online communities was also starting to become a thing. And so someone at DICE just decided it would be cool if we could just make a game like that, but instead of it being like a third person camera, we could see it in first person and get the unique experience from that, especially from heights. Like, how is it the consequences kind of seem real unless you're falling and in first person seeing the ground coming at you? But then also trying to tie a story around that, which the story, it's there. There's a story there. A coherent story, probably not, but a story is there. And then, but the gameplay itself, once I actually got my hands on it, and one was just brought into this world, how they executed that world, how everything was white, but yet through runner vision, because you're learning the game on normal and on easy, a lot of the most common ways to help you start traversing were colored red to get you used to looking for things that you should be looking for to help you move forward and traverse through the game, through the levels. And so the game was built all around all of that skill of parkour, the skill tree, everything that you could learn from getting experience points was built to make you a more proficient parkour runner. From like dodge rolls, not necessarily dodge rolls, but like a landing roll, so you could minimize, if not completely negate, fall damage from a certain height because you're using your momentum to carry you forward and not necessarily stop you from right when you land like an ordinary person would. And just being able to chain things together too, like the button combinations, the button timing, the button pressing, just to be able to run up a wall, do a complete 180, turn around as you jump midair, or jump up the wall, turn around midair, grab like like a pipe, swing yourself back and forth to fling yourself over a fence, land on the ground, roll, keep running, and then slide under some air ducts while keeping your momentum going. Like it was a game that was literally built and helped the speedrunning community find more people. Because not only that was a game built around speed, obviously, but there is also like a way to it would time you on how fast you could get the levels done with the parkour system. Because again, the game's all about speed, and the speedrunners completely obliterated that once they found their optimal movements and patterns and pathways through the game. But overall, Jesus Christ, was the game fun. The combat system really could have used a good amount of polish, but for the most part, it made sense for who you were playing as. You're playing as a runner, a parkour person with no real big military or fighting experience. So when you got weapons in the game, it was understandable why the weapons were terrible in your hands because you're not built for that. I mean, the reticle was literally just a dot. No matter what gun you picked up, it was just a dot. It's not supposed to be accurate. It's not supposed to be good because you just don't use weapons in general. That's your character. Your character has no experience with all those. Your character has a good experience about disarming, which that plays a really big role, especially since when you're doing combat, if you can get your disarm prompt and hit that right away, like you're essentially one hit killing an enemy, and you got a little bit of iframes while you're doing it. So you can't really get hurt while you're doing it either. So that kind of spares you from the combat of fighting a big group, but also you're taking people out one at a time really fast because once they're disarmed, they don't really get back up and try to fight you one on one. Unless that's like their character model, which some of them have like stun batons and melee weapons. But back to the point, I guess a lot of people really wanted a game that was like almost like a Call of Duty where you could do the parkour stuff, but you could also be a proficient fighter. Your character in the game is not really a fighter. They don't really, they can, if they get hit with bullets. I think it's only like 2 shots. Doesn't matter what difficulty, 2 shots and you're done. Maybe three on easy. Just because that's your character. That's the character that you're playing in the game. And we'll get to story and character in a minute. But it's like all these mechanics of the game made it unique for the time that it came out. It made it stand out a lot more because again, everyone was used to first person shooters. Everyone's used to Halo. Call of Duty was really digging its heels into the game or to the landscape at that point as well. Uh, Battlefield was just starting to kind of make its debut. Um, well, Medal of Honor was also starting to get phased out. Ghost Recon was becoming another big one, even though it's a third person. Still had an option for a first person mode. And so you're seeing all these shooters, all these trends that kind of make you more reliant and more uh, dependent on your skills and what you yourself know as a player from playing across these games. Because while one mechanic or two or three is different from this game, they still have the same core, which carries over very easily with how you react and how you make your judgments on what to do next. Whereas with this one, you're just an unarmed person, uh, just trying to get through the levels, trying not to get caught, trying not to get captured, trying not to get killed. And so you're made weak intentionally. You're made enough to disarm and protect yourself because once they're disarmed, they can't harm you. But you're not necessarily made to do damage either. You're not a combatant. You're not a trained soldier. You're just someone who's trying to make sure that they don't get hurt, they don't get completely messed up in any process. And while the tutorial, now I'm thinking about too, the tutorial of the first game was a little bit jarring and a little bit hard to get through, especially since it's like it's a completely new system you're having to learn, completely new way you have to use your brain and your fingers and get your timing down. Once you got it, and the game on easy and normal was a little forgiving in certain and most areas with the timing and how you traverse. And then later on in the game, closer to the end of it, you there was a bit of a curve where you had to improve. You had to get the system down to get your timing right to be able to pull off what you need to pull off to keep moving forward. And I like that. I like the world. I like the atmosphere. The character was unique. Story was a little bit meh. But also, this was at a time too where if you really wanted a very cohesive story, Naughty Dog was your company. Final Fantasy was the game you played. Most of the games that were coming out in the 360 era had stories, but they weren't like grand epics. They weren't too well thought out. They were just levels tied together with a narrative that made sense for them so they could be there. It was more about gameplay and then kind of connecting the dots in between. Um, but you play as Faith Connors. I don't remember the last name. She's a runner. Her sister is a cop, and you end up getting blamed for murder. Your sister catches you because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. She knows that you couldn't have done it, but because it's her job, because she just got called about someone being murdered, and she's there on the scene, her fingerprints and everything are all over the scene now. She does her best to kind of watch out for you. It's just she lets you escape, and then she kind of gets the cops a little off your tail, even though you're still going to find a few here and there. But then Faye goes down this whole rabbit hole of this big conspiracy theory as to why this person was murdered and by who. And it's it takes you down a lot of winding roads, none of them really too much of a payoff or too much of like an attention grabber. You're just kind of being like, oh, okay, there's a connection to this person. I have to go and find them. Okay, now I got to do the level and I got to do whatever it is to get them. Okay, now this person is saying that there's this going on or this happened, and that's all they know. And you're still trying to connect the dots a little more. Honestly, if it were like, if you were to take the story and just make it into a live action media, a live action medium, I was gonna say media, but I was like, that's not the right word. Um, you could probably get it all done in maybe like an hour TV show, maybe like a 3 hour season of a show. It really doesn't take that much of a time, that long of a lot. It doesn't take a lot of time to fully tell this story if you were to just fully tell it, and not buffer it out with a bunch of awesome, fun gameplay. So I think that's kind of where it really hindered the game. That and it not being a at heart first person shooter, just a first person game. Also kind of chimed it up because everyone was very, very set in that time around the what genre of game is this? A first person game was solely set for a shooter or again Elder Scrolls, Morrowind or I forgot the other game before. Uh, Dang, how can I not remember this game? It's freaking everywhere. Um, it's gonna bug the hell out of me. Anyway, uh, but yeah, and then if it wasn't a first-person shooter, it was an adventure. It was a JRPG. It was a puzzle game. It was a kids game, a racing game. Like it was very genre set and very defined genre made games because they wanted to make sure that the people who played these games could play these games and would buy these games. So like there wasn't really too big of an indie scene where it was like we're going to completely try something new and hope it works. They would sometimes take a risk and say we're going to try something new and see if it sticks. But you know, if it sucks, then we lose money and we can kind of take a little bit of a hit. But that was like the era of when this game came out, first came out, and it did okay. Honestly, it wasn't the best because it took a while for them to do a second game, like like a generation passed, or we went into next gen consoles, and then kind of near the end of that next gen console, they finally released another game, maybe midway through because the game came out like in 2016. But that was after a lot of fan outcry because speedrunners started getting the game and running it, and there was a big community about it, especially like on AGDQ when they would do runs where they saw that it was getting like a lot of good viewership. People were buying the game. People were picking the game up and trying to do speedruns on it and enjoy the game as well. And a lot of people always said the same thing. The story just wasn't there, but the characters were pretty solid. Um, the animation cinematics in between were very, very weird and off-putting, especially since the game itself had a more realistic look to it once you went into gameplay. And so they took a bunch of the critiques and almost like a decade later, a little over a decade later, came out and announced Mirror's Edge Catalyst, which it was almost like again like a pre-sequel, but also like a little bit of a soft reboot. The inconsistencies are like this happens before Faith gets her um, iconic tattoos that she had in the first game, but there's some story inconsistencies as to that kind of lead into the main game, the first game, mainly being with Faye and her sister's backstories from when they were young to her role that her sister plays in the world now because she's no longer part of the police force. A little bit of the same kind of story too is told. Faith showing up at the wrong place at the wrong time and getting almost like framed for it. And then there's a whole bunch of twists after that. I'm not really going to spoil that game because that game alone is fun. But this is also like at another weird time in gaming as well because aside from the Xbox 360 days where it was just like it just put you in levels, you do the thing, finish the game, bit easy A to B kind of thing. This was all done on levels. It was all on rails, so you had to go from point A to point B, finish the level. There were some objectives, kind of like every now and then, and the objectives were fine as long as you just kept going forward. But that was the gist of Mirror's Edge. Mirror's Edge Catalyst came out where gaming was in a weird ass phase. It's not even an era. It's just a phase of open world games. Almost every single franchise was doing an open world game for the entry of that time because that was the thing. Open world games were doing really well, especially since games were moving over to being games as a service. And open world games kept the players engaged for 80 to 120 hours plus. 80 hours plus. We'll just put it out there like that. Because if you just did level games, then a player can finish a game in maybe, depending upon how good they are, skill levels, if they're just going through and not really caring about collectibles or 100%ing the game. Sometimes 4 to maybe 16 hours. Other times maybe, on average, probably like 8 to 10 hours of gameplay on a level design game or a level based game. Whereas if you did an open world, then you have time for traveling, time for fast traveling, time for side missions in the world that take you to other parts of the world, time for main missions in the world that again take you to other parts of the world, and then open up more parts of the world for you to explore. And then there's collectibles, and there's other side missions, and there's other just like busy work that are there and designed to be there for the player to just stay occupied and keep playing the game because the more hours that people spend playing a game, the more successful that game is read as because players are wanting to stay and play that game and complete it and put the amount of time into it. The difference is a lot of those open world games usually don't have high replayability just because of either what they offer or what they don't offer. And so Mirror's Edge Catalyst got the same treatment and made it an open world game, which for this game actually helped it a lot. And it's one of the few games of this phase where being open world was more of a benefit than it was just being a feature. It wasn't a lot of games didn't get hurt by having an open world concept or open world entry, but a lot of games also just really didn't need to be open world. They could have just stuck to their guns and at their core just kind of been a level game, a level based game, and been fine. Dynasty Warriors is one that really, really hurt it, but we'll get into that like Jesus Christ, another episode. But anyway, the story was changed. Faye was redesigned as well, not by much, but character-wise, motivation-wise, she was a lot more fleshed out for this story, which kind of like affects the overall story of what you're trying to tell and what you're trying to do with the game. And because it being next gen and everything's on Blu-ray disc and you can fit more information on the game and you can just have a little more to work with, a little more leeway. it benefited the game a lot more with the world and the lore. And the combat system was a little more refined. The enemy types were a little more redesigned to benefit and help support the combat system, as well as still fit in to help build the world and make everything still flow really well. It's very, with a game like this, that's all based on movement, it's all based on speed, it's all based on everything you're doing, so you can get the most out of your character to get the most out of the world. All that has like a very sensitive balance that needs to be held. And the fact that they achieve that balance very well is a testament to how much they love the game. The designers of this game at DICE made that game, and that the people that were working on it were really passionate about it. Is it the best game still? Not really, not by much. Because again, the story is kind of, especially if you're a completionist and just doing a bunch of other open world shit while doing the main missions. If you just strictly do the main missions, the story is actually pretty. It's a lot more solid than the first game. And the first game, you just followed the narrative linearly anyway. Uh, but it had its moments. They felt grander. They felt more weighted, more realistic. It was not just a fun game, it was an overall better experience with that game. And like this game was just so good. I have my copy of the first game. I have my copy of the second game. And I got it on PlayStation 4 because I felt the world of the game would benefit better on the PS4 because PS4 does better environment graphics. PlayStation overall just usually does better environment graphics just because the way that the system reads the ray tracing and the lighting. If you have a game that's very environment focused or just has to deal with especially like lighting, like dying of light, I'm pretty sure it's fucking amazing on PS4. But anyway, I would get them on PS4. So I got this game because it is open world. Not if there is a night and day cycle in it, and I'm like, this lighting will look amazing on PlayStation. And it did. It looked gorgeous on PlayStation 4. But I bought it on PlayStation 4 with the collector's edition, which I also get through in a little bit because this one actually got a collector's edition. Got the um, got the game on PS4, played it 100%, platinumed it, absolutely loved it, enjoyed my experience. I'm like 10 out of 10 would play it again. And then, of course, like with all the other gamers, we get kind of sidetracked with other newer titles that are getting released and need our attention and our money. But one day, 2 years after the fact, I had to look this up. 2 years later, I see the game is marked sale, marked cheap, because it wasn't well received, and they're still wanting people to give a chance to try it out, play it. New gamers who are new to the franchise, new to the IP. And so it was on sale for I think like under $10. And I bought it on Xbox, the digital copy of the game on Xbox, and played it on Xbox because they were easy achievements. I already did them on PlayStation. They were fun. They're easy. I enjoy doing them all. I'm planning the game, and I think I'm only 2 achievements shy from 100% on Xbox. But I did it all again. I played the whole story again, and did everything I needed, just about everything I needed to. It was that enjoyable of an experience for me, especially to be back in that world and experience that game. Even though I knew everything that was going to go on in the game, just doing all the collectible hunting, going and finding all the secret locations of the world, navigating all the safe houses, all the checkpoints. It was still fun. Heck, even like doing the minute work of like all the dashes, finding all the collectibles on PlayStation for the first time, it was still just being in that world felt amazing, and I couldn't get enough of it visually. So I'm like, yes, the game is just being annoying because I have to do this and this kind of combination of movements to get to this area to get this collectible, but I am enjoying the views of everything when I'm doing it, even though I'm stuck in the same area for about like 30 minutes. It's still gorgeous, and I'm not tiring of it. And to me, that says a lot more of about a testament for a video game, just overall in general. Like I'm not gonna say nowadays, just because the game's been out for Jesus Christ, 8 years now. The second game has been out for 8 years now, but even now, like there are games that are just huge AAA games, fun to play, gorgeous graphically, but environment-wise, overall world building and aesthetic, it's just some of them are just not there. And yeah, the gameplay is fun, the mechanics are fun, the story is fun, the IP and the franchises are fun. But to have a game that doesn't have all of that because it's only the second installment after 10 years, and yet still be like everything about this is very curated, very personal, and it's made for you to just get lost in and just fall in love with. It does that. It achieves it, at least for me. And I just couldn't get enough of it. To me, that says a lot because I haven't had a game since the PlayStation 2 era that would do that. PlayStation 2 has so many good games. Xbox, original Xbox, and Xbox 360, I'll be honest about it as well, also has really good games that just draw you in and you can literally just dump hours into. Like when I had my PlayStation 2, I had maybe less than 20 titles ever in my life, and even now, like I still own copies of. There's probably about 8 that I own, but those 8, I would gladly hook up my PlayStation 2 again and pop them in and just enjoy the world, enjoy the game. I have beaten Onimusha like so many goddamn times. I know the game back and forth. I haven't even tried to speedrun it yet. I just play the game because I don't want to speedrun it. I'm not at that point where speedrunning it would benefit me, but just playing the game and getting immersed into it. Playing any of the Dynasty Warriors, especially 5. I love 5. But any of the Dynasty Warriors on PlayStation 2, and I could literally dump hours into them. I can didn't mind unlocking all the characters in that game, and that requires, oh Jesus, at least a solid 200 to 300 hours of gameplay to do all that. And I would still play all the characters I just unlocked to add on to that, and then just keep replaying the levels with just for funsies. And that's just like 700 hours onto a game, and I could definitely add more. And now in this day and age where there's so many titles getting churned out, so much noise, so many options, there is a certain niche of gamers that have found their one title and they can just stick with it hours and hours and hours on end. But then there's the majority of the average gamer now plays the game, finishes it, and then moves on. They may go back to it at some point, but they'll finish it, they'll move on. Uh, that's the landscape of video games now. And so again, at this era, to find a game that's just at that quality of like my old PlayStation 2 games as far as replayability and the world building or the world design, I absolutely just fell in love with it. And it's something I wish that came back into gaming. And kind of is now with like a lot of more independent games, and not necessarily AAA. AAA again, Xmore is like a game as a service because they want to find ways to keep getting revenue out of you through any means necessary. So words just get lost. It's because every time I think about something new on these two games, it's like I just want to play it. But luckily, this one did have a collector's edition. The second one, Mirror's Edge Catalyst, had a collector's edition. One of the bigger collector's editions I have seen for any game, especially the second installment, when the first one just had a regular plain old game release. Titanfall's probably like the next biggest, probably the biggest one that I've ever owned in its own person. Because I did buy the Titanfall statue that lights up for the first game. I made sure to get that when I bought the game because I knew I would enjoy it. Also, another episode going to be about Titanfall, and that game was also built on speed and movement. But it's just like almost like Mirror's Edge, but more so like on the Call of Duty side because it is a first-person shooter. And I'll be goddamned if those games are fun. Hopefully, we'll get a third one out of those soon. But anyway, the thing with this collector's edition is something that you never really would understand until you played the game, and that was the statue with the game. It is so beautifully done, so well done. It is Faith sitting against a window, piece of glass, uh, and on the other side, as she's looking in the reflection, it's her as a child. It is so heavy, but everything else about it is kind of flimsy, just because of the way it's set up, not necessarily the materials and the quality of it. But to have that statue and see it in person, it was just like I was awestruck, and I knew that this was going to play into the game narratively, and that they did this for a reason. But you also get like the temporary tattoos of Faye's sleeve, Faye's eye tattoo, some concept art of the game, and it was even for the price they had it at. I think it was like 150, 180 something dollars at tax. It was well worth it. I think I was when I went and picked it up at GameStop. I was one of only I think two to five people that had it, or that had ordered it, and I picked mine up. It was the first one out of all those orders to pick up. And I was super ecstatic. It was fucking huge. Still have it in like my closet because I'm waiting for the right time when we finally get everything going and I have like my own little library area and I can properly display a bunch of my stuff. I'm waiting for to have that so I can take it out of the box and properly display it. Otherwise, right now it's still in the little cardboard sleeve that it came in and still in the box that it came in as well. I kind of want to like take it out and unbox it and just stare at it, but we'll see. I have a toddler running around. I don't want her to break it. But also to have a game from this generation, or last generation, sorry, because that was PS4, Xbox One era. Uh, Heck, even nowadays, a game this generation that for me was so good that I was like, heck yeah, I'm buying it again and playing it again and 100%ing this again. Not just because it's an easy gamer score, but I really enjoyed it, and the fact that I can now do it and get the trophies slash achievements all over again, and get that rush, get that feeling of accomplishing everything for the quote unquote first time. Hell yeah, I will gladly go through that. And it's really rare to find a video game like that you don't mind buying even on a different console again, just to play through it and knock it out. There's other games that I know I would gladly do that with, but I won't just because of control schemes and principle. Resident Evil 2 being one, just because to me Resident Evil will always be a PlayStation game. At least on those entries, the Raccoon City entries will always be PlayStation games. I probably would never ever play them on Xbox for any reason. I will play Code Veronica and 4 and the third person over the shoulder ones that were more action oriented on Xbox than I have. Now Resident Evil for me is just strictly PlayStation, just because with all the remakes coming out and the main games already been out that I own copies on PlayStation, Resident Evil is always going to be PlayStation for me. I'm never touching on Xbox. Even if there is like a really, really good deal on it, I won't touch it on Xbox. But Titanfall is another one that I would like to play again. I've played it a few times. Titanfall 2. Not Titanfall, just Titanfall 2. And I don't know if I could play that on PlayStation. That's worked better for me as an Xbox title. And it worked better when it was an Xbox controller. But I really, really wish that more people had played this game or gave it a try and just liked it. At least not even not fully loved it, but just feel like that was worth my time. It was enjoyable. They're still around. You can still buy it. Xbox always has Mirror's Edge and Mirror's Edge Catalyst on sale for at least a good 70% of the sales they run. So I'd say if you do see them, by all means, grab a copy of them. Give them a try. Worst case scenario, you waste $8. And I can attest completely that you won't even feel that way. You'll be fine with it being $10 or like $4 for the original game and giving it a try. You'll definitely have gotten your money's worth out of it, regardless of how you feel afterwards and whatnot. But now I kind of want to play it. I've been listening to the soundtrack. It is one of both games have like some of the best soundtracks in video games in recent memory. There are other games that are like, yeah, no, these soundtracks are fucking amazing, and they go on like a bunch of top fives, top tens. Mirror's Edge and Mirror's Edge Catalyst for me definitely belong in the top 10. Probably not the top five, just because there's other games soundtracks that I'm just like kind of eked out. But to have a soundtrack that's completely curated for the world and for the experience you're about to have, and not just like a soundtrack that was thrown together or like a score that was just thrown together to kind of help get you in the mood to play. The game was purely made of love for Catalyst, Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Mirror's Edge, the original, was solely made to try and stand out and give it set itself apart, more so from the other games that came out and were in the same feel or the same category as it. And I'm just glad these games exist at the end of the day. I wouldn't call myself too much of a fangirl just because while I do adore them and I hold high admiration for them, I'm not going to sit there and avidly defend them. They do have their faults. And I do understand they're not for everyone. So I'm not going to be proclaiming from the roofs everyone needs to play these games because everyone's going to like them. No, like for a lot of people, they're not going to be. It's not going to be their cup of tea. It's not going to be something that they're going to be into right away, if at all. But for the people that will give them a chance, they will get their money's worth. They will enjoy them, if not as much as I do or other people do, and at least get a little bit of an appreciation for them and get them in the more conversations and in the more thoughts and in the more you know gaming lists as far as how they go. But for now, thanks for the rant. Thanks for listening to me talk about and gush over this game franchise that is very, very short. That I just really wanted to bring to everyone's attention. I know I just skipped the intro and jumped right into everything just because super excited to talk about this. And I'm just glad I finally got it out. This is just like the reason why I made this, wanted to do this podcast, so I can talk and gush about stuff like this with you guys under my own terms. Um, but thanks for the listen if you've made it this far. Do appreciate everything, as I always say, just because it is true. Feel free to follow, subscribe. Um, I am still working on stuff for the podcast, just because I got notifications saying that in June, Spotify for podcasters will slowly become like a distribution platform now, and not necessarily like a starting point like it was, or like a um, creator-led app like it is now. They're gonna do away with the recording and editing tools because they partnered with Riverside, and I've heard of Riverside. I haven't downloaded. I will eventually start trying and diddling around with that to kind of get a good idea of how to use it and utilize it and get everything going through Spotify for podcasters. And also, they're going to be doing away with the whole like radio show portion of it, so like the music talk as well. So hopefully, I get an episode or two out before they do that. If I do decide I want to try and do some more of those, I may make them Patreon only exclusives. Um, so yeah, we'll see how all that goes in the future. We still got a little bit of time before I have to figure something out or just be like, well, it was a good run and end the show. I'll keep you all up to date on that as everything progresses on my side. I am slowly getting things. I am slowly learning new things and getting a little more better and streamlined and optimized. So I will say that. But yeah, thank you all for joining me on this drive. I will see you on the next one. Take care of yourselves. Love you all.